Hey guys, Greg here. This is my number 2 video. Anyway, you guys had a lot of really interesting questions, questions that made me think a little bit, made me put a little bit of time into thinking about them. So I'm going to try to do posts. I've been kind of incapacitated the last couple of weekends, so I haven't had a chance to post before the weekend or anything, but I'm going to try to post on Fridays, hopefully, is my goal. I have long hours during the day, and I try to make time whenever possible to be able to answer these questions. So I appreciate all the time you guys put into them. I have my first question. So basically, as I get them, I'll just answer them that way. So the order that I receive them, basically. At Jack Swagger, Instagram name, Josh. The difference in production processes between ESP USA and LTD. Why would one invest in one or the other? Now, basically, comparing a U.S. shop or U.S.-based shop to, an overseas factory sometimes they're completely different things, and a lot of that has to do with the amount of time and skill and labor that goes into each instrument and care. Not to say that you can't get a very well-made instrument, obviously. As far as just in general, usually your imports are your bread and butter. They're the ones that are going to make any company money, whether it's guitars, toasters, televisions, what have you. It's just the cost of labor is a lot different. But also at the same time, it's not just the cost of labor; it's also the amount of care, the skill level that goes in. There seems to be a higher turnover rate. Not to get into like the deep in depth with the business side of it or anything, but a lot of times when you have a factory that's just trying to pump out guitars, there's a high level of turnover as far as their employee turnover. So with that said, you're constantly having to retrain, and you're not going to get as much consistency. That's not to say that you're not going to get a consistent instrument from an overseas factory. It's just the nature of the business is it costs a lot less to produce a guitar, and to answer some of that carefully, because I don't want it to be like saying one is necessarily better than the other. They're just different instruments. It's a difference between driving a high-end luxury car and getting a basic car that you need to get from point A to point B. That's the simplest way to put it. And you have your inexpensive or more affordable models, and you have your luxury class high end that has all the bells and whistles and all the details. There might be some that would dispute some of that and say it's not worth all the extra money. But when you see these things close up and you ABM and compare them, it's just a guitar for different price points, different levels of player, different types of people are going to want a high-end guitar. Different people are going to just say, hey, you know what? I don't need that. I just need something that I can make sound on, or this is my beginner guitar. I'll move up, I'll advance as I get, more skilled. And that's the stepping stone for most of us. So it is important to have a lower price point model that gets people in entry level and just keeps that momentum going as far as them wanting to stay with the company and move on to a high-end luxury item like a US made guitar or a custom shop guitar for that matter. That would be it. It's really price points that companies try to hit to make sure they can make the instrument accessible to people with different budgets and different levels of skill. Some of the best playing guitars I've played were import models that weren't very expensive, but they were just made very well, and that's the key. You just don't get say a certain grade of wood, or maybe as high of quality with certain components and things like that. That's just to make the guitar more affordable for people who are looking for a more affordable guitar. I hope that answered the question on that one. As far as the difference in general between manufacturers like Gibson and Fender with, like, say, production, there's going to be a lot of difference between, say, a Fender type style guitar and a Gibson type style guitar. Not speaking specifically of their production processes, but you have two different construction types between a set neck or a glued-in neck or a bolt-on neck or a screwed-in neck. That type of thing. The components, the way they mount are different, things like that. So there are going to be different processes based on an individual manufacturer's needs. As far as standard procedure, is relative. A guitar is going to feel different to one person, from another. I might like the way this neck feels on this guitar. Someone else might like the way this neck feels, and it's completely different. So there's not necessarily standard processes to get, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it might feel better to one person if you have a more round neck. Another company makes a flatter, wider neck. So again, processes aren't going to be standard across the board with all companies. If I need to go over that a little bit more, I will. Maybe I just need a little bit more clarification on that, and I thought I understood it a little better than maybe I do. But bear with me. I will get better at being able to get through some of these and give you a little bit more in-depth, specific information on this. So thank you for being patient. Let's see here. Mike from Sonic Pickups. He asked a sanding sealer or no sanding sealer. I mean, different companies do things differently. For myself, I use sanding sealer. I just think it just helps to kind of goes deep into the pores of the wood. It helps shrinkage, I think. It helps to keep the wood a little bit more stable. I know a lot of companies, they use maybe a UV grain filler, which would be similar type of thing as far as stabilizing the wood, sealing up the pores before a finish goes on. Then it gets sealed from there, sanded flat, painted. So for me, I say sanding sealer. I think it's beneficial, especially on softer, more porous woods. Obviously, perfect headstock angle. Same person asking that question, Mike from Sonic Pickups. Perfect headstock angle to me, I would say between 13 and 15. I think when you go too great of an angle, say 17 plus whatever, you end up putting a lot more down pressure on the nut, and that can be a binding point as well, especially on something that's not quite as slick. Like for example, like a bone nut gets a little dry, gets a little stiff, and strings don't want to slide through them as well. You got to make sure they're lubricated. Especially when you have a lot more down tension on the nut itself. That's a binding point as well. So I typically would go about 13 to 15 and not really more than that. Gives enough back angle, and there's a couple other factors involved with that, like if you're using tuners with adjustable height post or tuners with the staggered post heights, stuff like that, that's going to affect the amount of down tension at the nut on specific strings and tension gauges of strings as well. So there's a couple of different factors with that one, but basically right off the bat, if I had to say, about 13 to 15. Biggest F up, so that's edited. My biggest mistake or mess up that I feel that I've done was pull a guitar off of a bench with my foot. Basically, the guitar was plugged in on my bench, and it was a Dave Mustaine V, and he was doing a run of signed models for a company, for like a big name store. And they ordered so many of them, and he was autographing them, signing them. We were putting like a clear coat protective sealer on it around the logo or around his signature. And it was on my bench, and I was finishing up. I think I went to go grab a back plate or something, and I walked away. The guitar was plugged in. My foot caught the cable and pulled the guitar onto the floor. Ended up chipping the points and the headstock. I mean, we refinished it and everything. It was fine, but nothing structural happened. Maybe a little chip in the wood, but it at the headstock point. But other than that, it was cosmetic. so we were able to fix the guitar. But that was probably, I would say, dumbest thing I've done. Just not paying attention, going too fast, not watching where my feet were. You know, you learn things when stuff like that happens. You know, you just got to make sure. You know, for example, you want to make sure that tools are away from the instruments that you're working on, whether it's a repair or whether it's a new build, whatever it is. You want to have a clear, clean workspace, preferably elevated to where the guitar body is sitting off of the deck of the actual bench itself. All other kind of tools or any components are down below that, so you don't want to have, say, a screwdriver sitting right next to the guitar. Right next to a guitar, you could move the guitar the wrong way, not realize the screwdriver sitting there, hit it, things like that. So you just want to be careful with that kind of stuff. But yeah, just don't pull the guitar off onto the floor, and then I think you should be okay. Sunny D88, rolled fretboard edges. This is something that I personally, so I'm not going to speak for ESP itself because that's answered by other people. I can say that different companies have different standards as far as like product development and stuff, and sometimes that stuff is left up to say someone who's designing the guitars or a brand manager, product manager, stuff like that. There's things that they specifically want to see, certain qualities or characteristics that are inherent with a certain brand. For me to deviate from what the company's kind of typically done or traditionally done, or what a specific product manager wants to see, that's not really my call. But I personally, on my guitars, I roll the fretboard edges. I bring them over. Other companies I work for, I defined the fingerboard roll, you know, the rolled edge, as far as how we did it. You know, I know you mentioned Charvel. That's one of them where I really like a rolled fingerboard edge. Some don't like them that way because they feel a little too broken in, a little too round. That will also, you know, help the neck feel a little bit more narrow because you take in that top edge of it and bring it in. I prefer the feel of it, but you know, again, when you're working for a specific company, you're building to their standards and specifications, not necessarily your own. But that's stuff that I can always suggest and bring up, and you know, we get more feedback on that. Then that's usually where we make the decisions to make changes, is from, you know, you guys, where we do polls and stuff like that, where we'll kind of like throw a poll out there for you guys to answer and get some feedback, and we'll make changes that way too. But for the most part, sometimes those decisions are left to other people who might be above me or in different positions of defining what the brand is and what the products are that we make. So yeah, I do like a rolled fretboard edge personally myself. Okay, it's like Randy Andrian brought up the same as far as rolled edges and difference between USA and ESP original. You know, they might do a little bit more of a rolled edge on some of their stuff. I see some stuff that it's not as rolled. Different models will have a different characteristic or a different feel to them. I've seen that. As far as price difference, you know, it's pretty significant, I guess, and I don't do a lot of the pricing. I do understand what the pricing is on the models. We usually let the different factories define what their pricing is going to be, and we just kind of have to go with that based on how they're managing their shop. On our end, we're trying to provide a US made guitar that's affordable, high quality. Quality is like #1 thing for us. We are striving to make the highest quality guitar that we can for everybody out there, because we do know that they are expensive. They're not cheap by any means. They're not something that entry level, you know, someone entry level guitar player is going to pick up and get for their first guitar. These are guys that have been around for a while, guys who understand the quality they're looking for. They understand how they want the guitar to feel to them. So, you know, as far as what we make, it's just, it's just how we price out our guitars. If our guitars are maybe more affordable, I don't want to answer too much of that because I usually let the sales team work out pricing on that. So I just my job is to just make a high quality guitar as affordable as possible, and that would be all I can say about that specifically. I have another question from Sunny D88. Is it difficult to make a living working building for a Southern California based company with the high cost of living in California? So California is a you know, very high cost of living as far as rent, taxes, you know, especially in LA County, taxes are pretty high, relatively compared to the rest of the country. Not the highest, but as far as Southern California goes, there's a lot of people living in a small area, and you know, it's all about price and demand. But it can, but the thing is, it's like when I started, I think I started working, you know, people out of the country, they, you know, they're going to think differently about it, but I started at $7 an hour. And in California, you know, and in America, it's very hard to make a living on $7 an hour. Obviously, things have changed. You know, that's going back about 26 years. That's where I started, though, about $7 an hour. I was able to get by a little bit better, you know, back in those days than I would now. I don't think anybody can making that much. You have to be creative when you live in a area where there's a high cost of living, and maybe the prevailing wage or the kind of the industry standard for a specific position with a guitar manufacturing company isn't as high as you would think or hope it would be. You want to work toward, you know, you basically work your way up just like you do with any company. You know, you don't start at the top. You work your way through and you prove yourself and you put in a lot of hard work and dedication. And if you're passionate about what you do, that's going to show. Hopefully that's going to show, and hopefully that's going to lead you to where you want to be. Guitar building itself in Southern California, I don't want to say that it's hard to get good jobs where you can make a living, but at the same time, it's a very competitive industry. Everybody wants to get into it. There's a lot of people really interested in guitar building, and that scene, especially now in social media, you can see how many people out there are actually building guitars, how many good guitar builders there are, and you have all this exposure that you didn't have before. Like when I started, we didn't have social media to where you can see a guy working in his garage and you know, make some incredibly ornate and high level of skill instruments that, you know, a lot of companies don't even do. And you know, that some of that's going to help as well. It's a different world where you can self-promote that way too, show people what you can do through social media. You know, kind of show your chops, so to speak, so that way it kind of builds a portfolio for you. Just like a photographer will have a portfolio of their photographs and their works. Things like that. You can do the same with showcasing your talents as far as guitar building. That definitely helps to give you an edge to get, you know, hopefully secure a spot that you'd be happy with. So yeah, it can be a challenge, but just living in California in general is a challenge with, you know, any industry or career path you go, unless you're, you know, you're going for, you know, business, or you're going for a, you know, a high level position. But again, you usually have to work up to that stuff anyway, regardless of the industry. So California is just an expensive state to live in general. Okay, we have more questions from Rindy Andrian. And I'm looking at basically Horizon with a cockstock. Now I didn't name it that. I understand what that means. It's basically the 3+3 headstock, and it's basically the original Horizon headstock. You know, it's a 3 on the side. We did actually make those. That was the first version that we made at the USA shop, was the stock, headstock, and I like them a lot. I know our painter likes them a lot, Ryan, and he, you know, I actually like them. But what it was, we decided to change to the Horizon 2. The Horizon 2 headstock is the 6 on the side, regular orientation headstock. For those who don't know, but I know most of you watching this will probably know what I'm talking about. We changed that headstock because we basically put a poll out and we asked everybody out there, what is your favorite headstock? What headstock do you prefer? And it came back strongly that everyone wanted the 6 on the side. So that's why we changed. We actually made, I would say the first couple of production years or so, we were making the stock headstock on all Horizons that went through. Then again, our production output has jumped so much that we have a lot more visibility. We are producing so many more guitars than we were back then. So that changes things as well. But it was basically, we left it up to the fans, to the ESP fans out there, to let us know what they would prefer to see. Custom colors, why we seem to accommodate some but not all requests, or maybe we kind of cater to artists or dealers. I know it might seem that way, or it might appear that way. However, it's never the case. We won't just develop a custom color on the fly. I have never approved a custom color on the fly. It's always been a color that Ryan has been spending some time developing, and Ryan is our painter. Most of you probably know who he is who are watching this. You should check out his YouTube channel. He'll actually go through the different steps. I don't know what he's going to throw up there, but so far he's done some really cool videos on how he does the resin process, which is fun to do. Basically, you know, as far as custom colors go, artists, we have colors already we've developed already, and we aren't trying to develop new colors, like I said, on the fly, or because we get a request from a dealer or for an artist. Sometimes if we have special projects we got to do, we have guitars that maybe don't quite make production, you know, as far as quality, we have to do something with them, and that'll give us a chance to experiment and be experimental and develop new colors. Sometimes side projects give us the ability to experiment with new colors that maybe we don't just want to put on a production guitar. So that's how custom colors come about. They're never on the fly. We never just do them for certain people, not others. For example, if a custom color comes out and it's never been seen before, and it seems to you know, go to a specific person, specific dealer, it's because we've already been working on that color, and that just happens to be the first time that color has been presented. So yeah, we don't do any kind of special treatment or anything like that for anybody. If you know, if that's the perception, I definitely don't approve anything like that. And I know that we, as a company, you know, as far as the policy of the shop, I set most of the policies of the shop based on feedback from you know, others in the shop. I'm not, you know, making all the calls on that. And we pretty much unanimously agree that we're not going to do custom things of that nature. We have a whole other custom shop that does complete custom made guitars from every little detail that you can think of, from colors to fret wire to body shapes to neck thicknesses to headstocks, so all that stuff. So we have a custom shop in Tokyo that does all of our custom building. That was a good question, though. I mean, I want to make sure that that's clear, that we aren't, you know, just doing certain things for certain people, not for everybody else. What motivates me to play after all day around guitars? That can be pretty hard. It can be challenging, especially with the amount of time I have in an evening. I don't have much time after I get off work, but I try to make some time to do any of that stuff. Basically, I'm a big fan of thrash, and old school thrash, new school thrash, so anything in between. Anything like that just kind of gets me motivated to play. Been listening to a lot of Death Angel lately. So the new Death Angel, that's killer. you know, they've always been awesome. They've always been an awesome thrash band. So those are my motivating kind of musical genre. Kind of really gets me into the mood to play and practice and keep my chops up, keep my right hand going, my left hand going, keep my fingers strong, stuff like that. But yeah, so basically, I hope I answered all your questions. They were really good questions. I appreciate it. I'm sorry. It goes pretty long when I want to give you guys thorough answers. So please give me feedback in the comments and just let me know how you thought I answered your questions. If you thought they were thorough, if it gave you a better understanding of where I'm coming from, where we're coming from as a shop, or just my perspective. Like I said, it's not necessarily an ESP USA video, but I am answering ESP USA questions for you guys as well. So let me know. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for taking the time. And again, just keep sharing if you think anybody would be interested. If, you know, there might be someone out there who would want to know about some of this stuff, and you can always point them this direction. I appreciate it very much. Anyways, you guys.